be lunar eclipse too, which is happening right now as well. So I'm actually doing a group full moon meditation activation tonight at 8 o'clock in the Obelisk in Central Park. In the warm season, I do the events out there. This will be the last one. And anybody who wants to escape here earlier, you're welcome to come out to Central Park, right behind the Met Museum, the Obelisk of Egypt. So there, I do like channel guided planetary activations, grid work out there. So that's going to be really extra powerful. I'll talk a little more about that towards the end. It's going to tie into some of the things we're talking about today as well. Just before I start into my rant, because I go on and on. So, I've also been accused of talking too fast, so if it's happening, just like raise your hand and be like, slow down a little bit. Because I could talk about this for many hours, and in a 45, 50-minute stretch, I have to reduce, what I can discuss. Before I do that, though, I like to always hear people, make it also a little relevant for the audience. So if there's any kind of questions about certain ET groups you want me to include in my discourse, feel free to say it now as well. Like raise your hand if there's any kind of question. If you guys read what we're talking about today, there's something that you were thinking already along that line, and you maybe want me to add my input to it. You can say it now or you can say it later. It's up to you.
Is there going to be an expose of aliens coming? We're going to have some shopping.
Gotcha. Okay.
Is it going to be a red flag?
Gotcha. Okay. Cool.
Could you talk about the various ways of infiltration that happen right now?
Yeah. That's definitely going to be part of it. As much as I can compress. Anybody else back? I'm sure later on you'll have more questions. Has anybody watched any of my videos on YouTube, my YouTube channel? I wasn't sure. Okay, yeah. It's just under my name, yeah. And also, if you click my playlist on my YouTube channel, there's a bunch of interviews, other blog truck interviews, I go into a lot of topics. Yeah, just as a little side note. Also, we'll get started.
Just go.
You can always move it around.
Just go.
For first thing, before I go into my specific details, just also want to do a little test. How many people have watched the hearings with David Grush and all the other UFO witnesses? I want to make sure, as most of you have not watched it, looks. Well, those are definitely ones over YouTube, but Congress had the first real hearings over the summertime, and the best witness there was David Grush, who basically worked for the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency and the National Reconnaissance Organization, which are two very highly classified agencies. But so what we found out a few days ago is that they also just announced that they're going to have classified hearings with him just before Christmas, which is a nice little update that just came out a few days ago, because he's the real deal, and it's like the tip of the iceberg in terms of disclosure. But David Grush had talked about the fact that the U.S. government has been reverse engineering alien ships since basically just after World War II. So it's been going on for quite a long time, amongst the fact that the defense contractors are all working, a lot of them have their own programs working with these different ET groups and reverse engineering technologies, which is 100% true. So it'll be nice to see when Congress actually gets more hearings from that. The other famous one that popped out as a little reference point to build the context for today, back in 2020, what was his name again? I forget his name. Oh yeah, Haim Eshed. Anybody read about him a few years ago? He came out, he was basically the head of Israel's military space force, pretty much, their equivalent of that, their space directorate. He ran their space director for 30 years. He's a retired general. He came out 3 years ago and mainstream public covered it. He basically said that the United States and Israel have been in contact with extraterrestrials for a very long time, that the US made deals with these extraterrestrials to do experiments on the Earth. And he also said that the US and the extraterrestrials are working at a base on Mars. And he also confirmed that there's a federation of planets that wants the Earth to join it. This is the retired general of Israel, the highest official who ran their space agency for 30 years, said this. All of a sudden, media covered it, but then everybody kind of forgot about it. So these are little important details. These people are not quacks. These are very high-level officials. So we start to, we probably got a little bit of music a little bit there. Alec, I'll pull the music. I love it. That music gets louder and louder. So that's a little bit of background just to understand that, because some of those exopolitical affairs are affecting what's happening now in a lot of the wars, including wars in Russia, what's going on in Israel. They all have other levels of dimensional influences going on with them, aside from what we're hearing about in the mainstream media. You don't have to rotate that one. You have to be hers. That's right. It's okay, don't worry. Some of my videos on YouTube, I also go into deeper experiences about my past experience of being in the military abduction projects and secret space program. I can't go into a lot of those details right now because that would take up a whole few hours just to explain that part, but I want you to understand a little bit my background. I originally came more from a shamanic background, working with the Kabbalah, Egyptian mysticism, cosmic shamanism was kind of a system I developed. So I've been working on clients, which I do on a regular basis, help them tap into past lives, help them clear out different blockages in auric fields, do soul retrieval, help connect star people to their home world. So that's more of my day-to-day kind of life, right? This is part of that because it all intersects it. And so I also learn when I work with people because everybody has their own lineage, everybody has their story, and there's usually like waves of clients I work with that may be, say, Pleiadian star seeds or Arcturian star seeds or Andromedan star seeds. So now you learn more about those facets as well. And there's different stories being painted along time that which you can piece together. What I noticed about basically the beginning of last year was that our major world governments had made updated treaty deals basically with different extraterrestrial groups. But unfortunately, they updated the treaties with the negative extraterrestrials to basically give them more permission to manipulate our history and our timeline to become closer to this negative parallel universe. That's a longer story to go into, but it's basically they give them more carte blanche to commodify our consciousness. Basically have them use our energy to create more negative timeline effects, which obviously none of us here want that. But it's important to understand that this is a factor that's been going on. So what happened was that the first 6 months of last year, I'd say about 80% of my clients all were showing up with energy cords and implants in the auric field from different negative extraterrestrial groups and military bases that never had it before. Then from the second half of last year till now, 100% of my clients daily all have some energy cords and implants or constructs in the auric field. We're talking all around the country, other countries that are showing up with it. So for me, that's like the real level of like the epidemic going on that's kind of been not addressed because it's so important because so many people are showing up with different physical pains, different challenges in their life that is actually being augmented due to these constructs that are siphoning energy from their auric bodies basically and being used with technology to try to co-create these negative timelines. Basically, they're trying to use our own energy against us, to have us co-create a limited set of options that they try to convince us with all the media crap that goes on as well, all these polarizing topics that are happening, are also designed to corral people, to make us think that there's only option A or option B, when there's many more aspects of the narrative that we can evolve into that transcend that binary that we've been so programmed to think is the only way out, which usually just traps people more into a spiral of deeper duality, deeper scarcity, more loss of power. So the global elite and these negative ET groups, they're really aware of the fact that we have the power to really create this heaven and earth energy, that we're here as emissaries of our confederation of planets, of our central sun emissaries. We're here to be the extensions of our positive ET homeworlds and to call in our higher troops. And like, no, we don't stand for this crap that's going on here. We're here for the ascension of timeline. And so it's really important that we our power of intention to our power of attention. What are we feeding with the energy? Right, but also understanding where are we subconsciously being pulled and being drained, and identifying those vectors of influence so that we can be free of those energy harvesting mechanisms, of which there are many. But to understand that also, you have to understand some of the different groups that are going on that are here on the positive and like negative level. So as I started working more with the clients, especially the past few years, just to see what was going on, there were certain trends I noticed. You would start noticing like a demographic. Okay, X number of people have cords, that are showing up in their crown chakra, implants in the root, and it's all coming out of specific geographical locations. Then I start reviewing it more, and then that's how I work with people also. I work with different galactic beings, different angels. So it's not like normal remote viewing. It's more like a clairvoyant extension where I project out. You can see what's going on in different locations, or track the cords and the constructs. So I'll talk about a couple of the annoying facilities that are beaming a lot of stuff out to people, just so we can build intention. Because half of their ability to harvest energy from us is our ignorance of the fact that it's happened. once we bring more light to that shadow aspect and call it out, and we revoke any permission slips that we might have unconsciously given them, because it's very important that we, create a healthier boundary. Although it's kind of a test here as well, isn't it? But this idea is applied on many scales, many dimensions, one of the groups that has been really well. There are a couple of groups that I mentioned that you may not have heard of, because a lot of people have heard about reptilians and like Greys. That's more like the traditional people. There's several other groups that are really assholes. Let's put it that way. Several other groups that are really annoying and that are really harvesting energy from people that have not been getting any press, pretty much. And they need to be called out so that we can call in extra support. And be like, no, we don't consent to having our energy be used against us. We don't consent to having any of our bioetheric emotional energy connected to any technology, from these negative groups. One of the groups that's been quite annoying has been they're actually, it's funny, you might laugh when you hear about them first. I call them the Joker group, because they're actually a small, they kind of look like Greys. They're small, dark hair, no hair, they're little, like wrinkly heads. To make fun of them, I call them the raisin heads. This is a funny reference, because you have to discharge. No matter how scary some of these dark ETs look or try to project, you can't give them the power of being afraid of them. Even if they are strong at some points, your higher self and your guides can be stronger than them, right? But so a lot of the negative groups feed off of our fear. They feed off of terror. They feed off of conflict energy. They feed off lower anger energies, right? So the more we kind of stay centered in our heart chakra and really claim our space shamanically on a metaphysical level, the more we have a healthier boundary so that we're not compromised in our position to give our power away by these different technologies. So this particular Joker alien group, they're, like I said, the images they project are straight out of like the Joker movie, basically. Like the last Joker movie that came out, I was people that were coming out of the movie theater were being implanted with energetic metallic lids on their crown chakra. So they basically work with the dark clown archetype, and like the negative carnival funhouse energy, and like negative funhouse mirrors, which may sound kind of funny, but they had a whole grid around New York City recently that we had taken down a few weeks ago, actually. I was away for almost a month in St. Martin in the Caribbean, doing some Atlantean grid work and research out there as well, which was a whole other story. I'll tell you a little bit into that. But then I had some friends over here that were calling me up and like, oh, they were picking up on the fact that this Joker group had put another enclosure around, another grid around New York City. So when we came back, it was like the worst landing energetically had coming back to New York from a beautiful place. It felt like New York was surrounded by these like muddy waters with like energy walls that were closing in all around me, and I literally had a full body allergic reaction. As soon as I stepped off the plane in JFK, I'm like, oh my god, I want to get back on the plane. I can't be in here. So we had to do some emergency grid work at the Obelisk in Central Park a few days later, once I reclaimed my own apartment, and so to speak, because it was the grids were all messed up. When I got home, I was horrified. But just to understand that there's so many background environmental influences aside from this that are trying to pull our energy, but also create stress in ways that we don't even imagine or conceive of. But so much of their methodology, all these groups are about trying to create division both within us, between each other, and around us. Different barriers that are projected to try to encage us so that we're not able to properly connect to our higher dimensional selves. Some of them will come up. That was around the city a few weeks ago. There was two groups that put grids around New York. One of them looked like a negative square tiled grid, where they were projecting out these two-dimensional square structures that were trying to create barricades so people weren't able to properly move between 1, 2, 3, 4D. It was really so you really felt like you're being caged. So that got taken down. Like otherwise I wouldn't be standing here. I wouldn't be able to stand it. But if a lot of you felt stressed in September living here, extra weirdness, that's something to pay attention to. It's not just your own stuff. It's negative environmental influences that are multidimensional that are being used to try to evoke certain behavior from the population so that we create part of the crisis that they then cry about and create new laws of control and hysteria. And it's like the problem reaction solution methodology, but applied on all other levels of social engineering, where they want people to act out and create certain types of rebellion in a negative way without any real solution, right? Keep people at chaos so that we're not in our heart chakras. It's the same idea. They're doing that globally. You can see that obviously going on in the Middle East right now, which I'll definitely talk about that a little bit too. So this particular group that has more the Joker energy, they're from a negative planet in Orion. Same star system as another negative extraterrestrial group that works with the energy of Set. Set in the Egyptian mythology, he was the one who killed Osiris. He was the main, one of the dark figures. It was Set in Apophis. It was a dark serpent ET group, dark serpent leader in Egyptian mythology. They're two very powerful groups that are very negative. One of the biggest covens of black magicians, the dark magicians, a human body are worshiping Set and work with Set energies. They have their websites up where they talk about a lot of intense dark magic stuff they do. So they're also one of the main, from former people that I've known connected to the Illuminati families, they're one of the main deities that the Illuminati worships. The Illuminati have temples that are dedicated to the god Set. The pyramid eye and the dollar bill was originally Freemasonic, but then it was co-opted by Illuminati members who were worshiping Set, and they polarized it to be his eye. So it's important also we see symbols that are all around us that we may not understand who these symbols are dedicated to. So it's about also taking back our power so that we're not viewing it through someone else's lens, and realizing that all this subliminal marketing that's going on, not just with advertising but in general, on a more subtle esoteric level, is designed to try to hook into us so that we're feeding into their paradigm, so that we're giving our power away to their magical thought forms, because magic exists in all different dimensions. The higher extraterrestrials work with real magical archetypes, magical thought forms, because they're multidimensional. They're all very psychic. They have all psychic function. So it's not just like what we think of like Wicca or like magic on our level. It's multidimensional. Light wizards and dark wizards do exist on the higher dimensions. And there are whole different groups that fight on the level of thought forms. They basically compete to create thought forms that harvest energy from planets that they want to conquest, that they want to manipulate and control. And the positive light wizard councils, they do the opposite. They want to help us evolve. They want to help us line up more to divine oneness, more to unity. So it's a very involved process that's going on. We have these competing factions. That particular group that I mentioned about the Joker group, they're working a lot out of Colorado, out of Buckley Air Force Base specifically, because our government, U.S. government, has agreements with pretty much every negative ET group you can imagine out there. We have alliances with them, unfortunately. So this is something that has to change. But before we have the positive extraterrestrials land here, we need to be like, no, we don't give our power away to these defense contractors, to our shadow government cabal leaders that have made these deals illegally to harvest us and commodify us. It's basically commodifying consciousness is the real currency in the galaxy. And so they've gotten very clever of how they want to commodify not just our labor, but our bio-etheric energy, our emotional energy, our soul pieces in certain cases also can get harvested. So, it's not to bring up more fear, it's being aware we're dealing with a lot of crap on a collective level that needs reconciliation before the real ascension can occur, but before the positive galactic beings are going to land, which they definitely are still going to be here. But the fight is about our evolution of our consciousness. These groups are very desperate to slow down our evolution, to keep the DNA and the heart chakra lower so that they can buy more time for their matrix of control. And they've gotten very clever of how they want to engineer different constructs that define that matrix of power and control, which usually takes the form of different grids, energy grids that are artificial, that will be interlocking certain sacred sites that these negative groups want to spin it. They want to polarize it so that it's misqualified, misappropriated, and then it tricks people into anchoring into it instead of the authentic Gaia grid. A lot of times we end up anchoring into this false light grids that these negative groups have created. So, I'm literally doing work every 2 weeks with groups to take down these grids with a higher galactic being. So, it's definitely been a process, especially this year, since last spring, especially, it's been nonstop, So, we're also trying to help build bridges to the positive galactic groups. The Andromedans are one of the ones. There are many, many groups of Andromeda that are coming in. They're really part of our divine justice intervention teams that really want to help the Earth evolve and be set free from the grip of these negative technologies. When I call these groups, there are also certain phrases that we also include as part of the invocation process. There's a term, because for me it's also evolving some of our relationship to language so that we can evolve our thought forms that can tap into higher, pure well springs of consciousness, that the positive galactic beings will see that as a kind of spotlight to help interact with us and override some of the malware that we have from the distortion of linguistics being used, like polluted concepts, on different names that may have connotations, that are not always so pure. It's almost like trying to cut through like the turbulence before we get above the cloud to see that pure energy of what that concept is about. So one of the phrases we work a lot with is called star heart. And the star heart has to do with the evolution of the heart chakra, where there are new chambers forming in the heart chakra, as well as in the auric body, where it's appearing more like a diamond shape around the auric body. And in the center of each of those triangular facets are like shafts of light that can penetrate your heart chakra that come out from different star systems. So, for example, with the Andromedas, I would say I call them the Andromedan Star Heart Infinity Defense League is one of the groups. Andromedan Star Heart Infinity Defense League. And that's like a general term for a specific group of positive ET planets that have been sending a lot of their ships here that are really fighting for us to be set free against these negative ET groups. But they also require our permission to call them in more, because we have a lot of dark humans that are calling in the negative ETs. So we need to balance it out and have light here and say, hey, wait a minute, we don't want to roll with that gang, so to speak. We want to be able to call the positive ETs and give them more permission to intervene, not only for us personally, but on a planetary level, global level, local town level, and to reinforce that. In a way, the idea is kind of like a diplomatic embassy, where your home can be an extension of these positive galactic beings. And ideally, it's you finding out more of your own galactic home or intergalactic home, calling in that support so that you're giving them permission to help structure the energy environment around your home so that it becomes an extension of your true home world. And like an embassy that has its own protection around it, they can offer, so when someone tries to attack you, it's as if they're attacking them. So then they can send in more support. So it's a little bit of it's like reframing the idea to say that you're not just a victim of these local laws of U.S. control or like shadow government bullshit. The idea is that we are galactic, universal, sovereign, love citizens. From Pleiades, Arcturus, and Andromeda, many different worlds. So it's like building a shamanic bridge in your visualizations from each direction. Because in the beginning, I usually call on the archangels from each direction, and above and below, before I do any meditation or channeling work. Then the specific ET groups that want to come in, they will also respond with different images, like these corridors of light or like these bridges of light. Think of like a drawbridge to your castle, where you have this etheric drawbridge that Mother, Father, Earth is also creating out energetically, multidimensionally, to act as an interface to incoming crystalline fields of energy that our galactic families are trying to use as a kind of restructuring, revamping mechanism to help us kind of plug in to these larger crystalline fields that are hyperspatial, multidimensional. So the negative groups are doing the opposite. They're trying to, distort Gaia's spin field on different levels, trying to create all sorts of distortion inside the Earth so that we're more destabilized and not properly rooted into this new evolutionary template. So this takes, regular focus, because if you're in this kind of work, it's not, there's a lot of good stuff, there's a lot of headaches. Just because we're constantly trying to monitor this. I work with different people. I do also, aside from the in-person group work and the individual sessions, I also do the group work on Zoom as well. So we have people calling in from different countries, different times, so we can really get more of a larger team. Not even so much about largeness, as it's more quality people that are anchoring the light with us and have that intention set up as well. It's important because we start looking at more of these bigger groups. It can be a little overwhelming when you first understand the level of control that has been so insipidly undermining so much of our collective growth for so many years already. We've already could have had contact with the positive extraterrestrial several times already. That's gotten blocked by different negative ET agendas, and different political events that have happened, different things. I mean, especially from like the jab. I mean, I don't know who's gotten the vaccinated from the COVID stuff, but hopefully it's a minimal level here. But but if you've gotten it, there are ways to deactivate it. But it is also a nice little segue point, which I can go into. There's another group from Sirius B, who's also been a major player that's been influencing a lot of people and creating a lot of negative grids around the planet. There are positive groups from Sirius A that a lot of people have talked about and from like the indigenous tribes and connections in the old days. But a group from Sirius B, for those who watch Star Trek, they're like the Romulans, literally down to the T. Like the Romulans are modeled after this group from Sirius B. So imagine merging, so they're humanoid. Imagine mixing like Roman Empire with CIA and Men in Black. This is pretty much how they are, So, they love their being behind the scenes, and they were also one of the main extraterrestrial groups involved in the Montauk project behind the scenes. The Reptilians, Anunnaki, and the Sirius V group are the major players behind a lot of the time manipulation projects, time travel projects, military abduction programs, heavily involved in that. I also have a niche of clients I work with that have all been involved in military abduction, secret space program clients. and it's a lot of shit, a lot of stuff that's going on with these people. Now, I'm part of that community as well, but I met people that were also in the same projects as me at certain points, and then I've worked with clients who didn't know each other. They were part of the same projects on the moon bases on Mars, parallel realities. I mean, the stuff that I can go on for hours about this, but the point is that it all intersects, where there are a lot of these people that are also involved in some of those projects were like star people, star seeds, that might have had some negative extraterrestrial lifetime. It's not even just them, but one of the other things I notice a lot is that's important to clear is that as star people, we don't only just have positive galactic incarnations. A lot of us have had negative extraterrestrial incarnations because we've been involved with the galactic wars for so many friggin' eons. You know, we also have to find a way to infiltrate those groups, help to remind those on the dark side that they can go back to the light, that it's not just about the duality of maintaining that conflict zone for so long. There's also wars that are fought through time, and the Andromedans are heavily involved in trying to help us manage some of this temporal manipulation and time wars. So they've also sent a lot of people to incarnate in some of these dark civilizations so that they could have long-term, multi-incarnational strategy to understand how to deconstruct the constructs that the negative ETs have created, and also have agents of light who can wake up again. And when we wake up to that role, we become like the sword of light that pierces through the cloud, and then the sunlight, so to speak, can come in. So it becomes like a much deeper kind of way of engagement. But the problem is that if you don't realize you've had a negative lifetime, this is one of the main ways that the negative groups are also trying to hook into people, are through contracts that you had signed when you were on that dark side lifetime that you may not be aware of, but they are very aware of it. So they're trying to use anything they can against us to access and use people as extensions of influence into local areas, as Trojan horses. So that's why it's so important that we take accountability for our own shadow, not just in this lifetime, but multidimensionally from other lifetimes, and realize that we are the alchemists. In order to do that, we have to really transmute that hidden, unseen darkness so that we can become that extension of the divine sort of light that we're meant to be here, and bring in that divine love and divine justice together. Because it's not just, it's love and will together. It's not just airy fairy love. We have to have, it's a sword of Michael, that cuts through the BS. It's that fiery flaming sword that's needed. And these constructs are very real, especially in the astral fourth dimensional level. So when we do group work, there's always stuff that comes up where we're creating certain types of shielding and certain types of geometries that help us plug in to our starry family, and then they can connect with us more and help to intercede. So this group from Series B, they have one of their facilities in the U.S. that's been really annoying is out in Arizona, in southern Arizona, by one of the native reservations. Unfortunately, they project a lot out from there. They have a big one in New Zealand. New Zealand is a hot spot for this kind of like galactic, local, dark Illuminati, let's call it that, because it's like some of these high-level people from the Set group in Orion, from Sirius B, from this Apophis Serpent ET group, and another one are all based. One of their global headquarters is in New Zealand, and they've done a lot of distortion of the Earth's grids from that location that we've had to keep intercepting a lot. Just a little side note, but a lot of people locally in the States that have had implants from Series B has been from Arizona base. So there's a little specific detail. There are also a lot of the defense contractors in Colorado are also very, very heavily involved with different negative extraterrestrial groups, especially in Colorado Springs and Aurora, Colorado. Lockheed Martin, Boeing, L3, like every major defense contractor pretty much has deals with different negative ET groups. So it's not, none of them have their hands clean. So I have to be able to understand what's going on with this. Boeing Corporation especially works with the negative Nordic extraterrestrials, which everyone's heard about the negative Nordics. There's positive Nordics and there's negative Nordics, right? The positive Nordics are from Arcturus. There's 2 planets that orbit Arcturus. That's the real Asgard. And they're extra important because they want to come in more to help us out now. They were getting blocked for quite a while this past year and reaching out to humanity due to certain distortion fields that the negative Nordics, which connect to Loki. There was Loki from the Nordic mythology. A lot of these deities and mythologies are really extraterrestrials, especially when you deal with these traditions where they're more like demigod status. So Loki is a very real 5th dimensional being who's quite a pain in the butt for a lot of people as well. Let's put it that way. And even you see Hollywood trying to glamorize some of these beings with some of these TV shows that are coming out. Like Disney has a whole TV show about Loki and about a time travel agency, which is quite real. But they try to paint Loki in more of a positive, almost victimized image and make people more compassionate towards him. So if you watch some of the Marvel movies, so many Marvel movies actually have seeds of disclosure in them. And so it's like front-loading the population to understand some of these characters that are actually quite real, even though they're glamorized and fictionalized and, you know, very drawn out ways in the movies. But Loki is a very real being, and he's not someone to be trusted. He's a negative trickster, to say the least. He's the leader of the negative Nordic ETs. So it's like the space Nazi general, you know. So that's not someone you want to trust or call in. If, you know, there's discussions with people in magical groups where they work with different archetypes, and that level of corruption has also infiltrated so many magical groups that were maybe more innocent. Like, you know, with Aleister Crowley, was definitely a dark side magician. You know, I've got a lot of stuff he's written about, but he's had light and dark stuff. But there are people in his group, you know, that were also calling on Apophis, or they were doing banishing rituals where they were also including negative Egyptian deities and pretending as if they're light. But that's how the dark infiltrates, is they want to convince people, hey, we're just your shadow, don't worry, you have to integrate us. But it's like, no, you're not real, you're the false light that's infiltrated the shadow. It's like trying to blame, you know, the environment of the underworld is not negative. It's what contaminates it, what fills it can be negative or positive, right? You don't mix up the environment for the crap that fills up the environment. You know? So but people make a distinction. They hear Pluto or the moon, like, oh, it's all crap, it's all ETs. But no, it's your subconscious, it's the collective unconscious. That doesn't make it inherently bad or good. It's an environment to reflect your shadow, your stuff that you don't want to see. You know? So that's why it's more important for you to see it. You know, so you bring light to it and illumination to it, not just shove it under the rug or not be afraid. Because even with my meditations, there are certain groups that were writing stuff out there. Oh, you can't do any meditation on the full moon because the moon is artificial. It's all negative ETs. I'm like, Jesus Christ. I'm like, thousands of years our ancestors have done ritual with the moon, understanding the cycles of power of the moon, fertility rituals, triple goddess energy. You don't want to give your power away because there are some bases on the moon that are filled with galactic, you know, assholes, so to speak, that are there. You know, so there are also positive beings that are working in the moon. You know, and it's a major symbol of our personal unconscious and the divine feminine. So if we let the negative energies overshadow that by giving them so much power that we get rid of that sacred relationship to a local planetary body, you see how you're giving away your power in a very direct way. You know, but the same thing happens in astrology, where there's shadow aspects of our planets in astrology that also can get twisted. Like a lot of people have talked about Saturn in a very negative, derogatory way, or because it's been misused by different dark occult groups. The negative extraterrestrials have corrupted the idea of like the black cube and the black sun. They're different, you know, and they'll try to apply it kabbalistically to be like, oh, this is really Saturn or Bina in the tree of life. I say, no, that's a corrupted version of the planet Saturn. The planet Saturn is divine. It's one of the highest evolutionary planets in our solar system. It goes up 8th dimensional level. You read the Law of One books. And it's the local United Nations hub, if you want to call it that, for galactic positive benevolent races that are here, want to engage humanity via Saturn. And so if we have a negative relationship with Saturn, or think that it's negative, you see, it's part of the propaganda mechanism that the dark groups create to create fear where there's most access to potency, power, that would actually liberate you from the oppressor's reach. So it's all this inversion and like distortion that go on. Yeah, I'll go for extra 5. Like 7, 6, just give it 10 minutes on, 15. So that, you know, is very important to also understand that we have to deconstruct this malware programming that we have in our emotional body and our collective psyche, so that we're not afraid of the very solution that can help us. You know, because that's usually the key to getting rid of this pollution. Now, I want to loop that back into some other things going on geopolitically, because it's also happening as well. I'm trying to make a long story short, right? With Russia and Ukraine. So there's another group called Baal. Baal was a negative entity that's written about in the Quran and the Bible, and you know, all the major religions have mentioned this ancient dark demonic figure called Baal. You know, that in the ancient days that the Israelites used to do their sacrifice to the Baal deity. He was connected to stuff during the Sumerian. He's different from Anunnaki. Similar to Anunnaki, but different. Baal has been involved in like the foundation of the money system for a very long time. Little backstory, then I'll loop it back into now. Several years ago, we were doing some work against some of Baal's covens. There was these negative groups that were worshiping Baal and doing dark magic. I can't even remember the details because we do stuff so much stuff I forget at times. But I also record everything. So you know, if anyone wants copies of some of these interesting grid work we do, you can let me know. Anyway, after we were doing some work to counteract these Baal groups, literally down my block, I'm in Midwood, graffiti appears on the side of the bridge, Baal. Somebody wrote Baal several times. That one of my friends who lives nearby witnessed to that. And we were like, oh great, fuck F you, you know? So, you know, they have their local minions. That's what I'm understanding. It's not just about covens working with demons and angels and they're positive. There are covens that work with extraterrestrials. The demons work with the negative extraterrestrials, the same way the angels work with the positive extraterrestrials. It's like as above, so below. the energy of the demonic forces are on the inner planes, right? The negative ascendant extraterrestrials are on the externalized outer planes of planets that have evolved. Same thing on the opposite side. The positive ascendant light beings, we work with angels who are present on the inner planes of any given planet. There's more transparency, though, in those realms, right? So that's what people don't understand. It's not just, there's a lot more going on with how they corrupt symbols and power to try to energize these symbols that draw in like an antenna, either light or negative forces, depending upon what they've set up in a local area. So when Russia had invaded Ukraine, first thing that they did was they had taken over Chernobyl. And I was like, okay, what's going on in Chernobyl? It's not just because he wants to have a shortcut. There's something in Chernobyl. There's something hidden there that they wanted access to. So I called up one of my other clients who works for one of the agencies, put it that way. Anyway, and this particular person said, well, her sources were telling her that hidden in Chernobyl were actually a lot of evidence and records of deep state and Illuminati activity that was being kept there as like a secret storage unit, so to speak. And that was one thing that Putin wanted to get his hands on as leverage. And it wasn't for humanitarian purposes. Some people saying, "Oh, he's really a white hat." No, Putin's not a white hat. so there've been a lot of back and forth discussion between like the white hats and the black hats that are inside these organizations. And I was like, "Oh, well, now what came up?" Because during one of our other remote viewing, much bigger than that, we were doing work on a different project, but we had to scan a facility that was near Moscow. This is just the beginning of the conflict. And there was a negative Nordic ET base there, but there was also a base for Baal. And it was the first time I'd seen a base of Baal anywhere on the planet. I was like, oh, I didn't know that Russia had some kind of alliance going on with Baal. So over a period of months, we started looking deeper into it. A lot of things were happening to unfold it. We realized that Baal has had a hidden relationship also with Russia. This was part of the deeper storyline behind Rasputin. Rasputin was actually working with Baal, and they wanted to overthrow the Romanov family because Baal feeds off of war and power and conflict energy. And so it gets deeper into like exopolitical influence in some of the figures in history because Baal has had deals with Illuminati families for many, many centuries. At the same time that we were working against some of the Dark Covens several years ago, there was another friend of ours, another contact in Europe. She was part of an organization where she had access and she had met with some of these younger family members of several Illuminati families. And they all told her that they had been visited by a physical manifestation of Baal's group that wanted them to sign contracts again to update their alliance with that group. And they all said, F you. They all didn't want to do it. So when I saw that several years ago, I said, oh, Baal's going to be pissed off. He's not going to just let the Illuminati families get off that easy. So that's why you fast forward now, Putin-Baal alliance, Baal gave Putin the information about Chernobyl so they could use physical leverage because Baal is actually in a body now. He's not incarnated, but it sounds a little crazy, but there was a super soldier kind of clone project in Russia where they were preparing a very special dark body that was going to be the avatar vehicle for Baal's presence. So Baal is a walk-in now inside this human body that's really upgraded, let's put it that way. And he wanted to have a seat at the round table of the Illuminati. But like, well, since you guys don't worship me anymore, I'm gonna go take over your organization. So this is a deeper level of conflict, which kind of threw the Illuminati and the other groups in the Western side for a little bit of a spin because they weren't expecting that kind of in-house conflict going on. So it's not all even, it's not all clean. Like it's like the different gang leaders that want their turf warfare, going on. They want this neighborhood, they want that neighborhood. So Baal had moved his headquarters to Turkey, which is also the reason why Turkey got on Russia's side as well. He has a base that's in Mount Ararat, where Noah's Ark was been present at. So it's a major ancient vortex, biblical day vortex there, that's like the headquarters of Baal, and he's actually one of the top players of the Illuminati now. That's a whole longer story, getting confirmation there, but a little tailspin. Baal feeds off of war and money and power. So the Ukrainians that are getting killed, they're really trying to harvest energy from people that are dying to feed their network. This is what happened since day one. Most of ancient wars have also been dedication of sacrifices to negative off-world dark ET groups and negative forces that want to feed off of that trauma energy. So it's very messed up, to say the least. Obviously. Same thing is happening now in Israel and Gaza. Now, I mentioned it before about Israel having that alliance also with U.S. with Series B group. Now, irregardless of I want to go too deep into the political side of it. One is wherever there's a conflict, negative entities feed off the energy there. Let's put it that way, it's on a very simple level. You can also tell me there's no way that they didn't know that's the most secure border on the freaking planet. To say that they didn't know Hamas was going to attack them is the biggest BS. I'll show you the Brooklyn Bridge if you actually believe that. Because I've had other friends in the intel community who were following Netanyahu for many years and said that it was a Cain and Abel story where he got rid of his brother many years ago to get that position as an extremist to get his power poised. He's been investigated for so many corruption charges in the current Israeli government. He surrounded himself with far-right extremists who want to kick out all the Arabs from that area. So you understand part of the methodology is that they let things happen so that they could create their own 9/11 event. This is what's really going on. There's no sides here. I'm for civilians. I don't believe in civilians being killed. Right? I think every freaking government's corrupt pretty much on the planet. So to understand that, we need to change that idea. And so what we're also seeing is that part of that group from Series B and that group from the Set Orion group, they're feeding off that negative energy, of that death energy, out in the battlefield in the Middle East right now. And to give you a little idea of extra confirmation, that type of stuff, back during the Iraq War, again, another fabricated thing, that 9/11 inside job, we wanted to create this whole global war on terror and feed the extremist methodology so that we could create the whole new expanded police state right around this whole thing on past 20 years has been such a farce. So in Iraq, back in 03, during the first big battles that occurred over there, we were doing a lot of spiritual warrior work, and we felt such a darkness come over the planet when the U.S. first invaded Iraq. We're like, oh my God, it's not just about this war we're seeing, it's a war on a bigger level. And they're accessing ancient vortexes in Iraq, and then later on Afghanistan, and this is like major Stargate wars going on there, and a whole thing happening. So we had seen that Apophis group and the Set group were also harvesting energy in the battlefield there. Then many years later, I had a client who worked in like three different military branches. He was out there in a big battle in 2003. He comes to me as a client. He goes, "Oh, I'm being attacked by Apophis group and Set group." I was like, "What?" Especially because he was in the military. I'm like, that's a weird thing. I don't usually have someone saying it so direct to me. And he goes, "Well, because I was there on the battlefield in 03." He goes, and me and the Marines all of a sudden started seeing tall, 20-foot tall shadow beings were phasing in and out of the battlefield, walking on the desert sand. They were like, "What the hell's that? Like, we're not being told something." Then they saw these other tall shadow beings walking what looked like a hound of wolf, black wolf-like dogs that were also giant, very tall, across the desert. They were phasing in and out. And then he was in the medical division, and when he was at the morgue after the first big battle there in Iraq, he said there were bodies literally moving around by themselves, and the morgue, computer systems, light ovens flying off the shelves, and one body that literally flew across the morgue by itself and appeared on the other side of the room. So he's like, "Oh my God, there's something bigger going on." So he started investigating and came to the same conclusion that also there were these big groups, also in Hollywood, different levels of elite that are worshiping Set, and there are those that are in alliance with Horus, who's more the positive bird tribe energy. And so you realize that this was a much bigger conflict that was happening, and that they were feeding off the energy of sacrifice to people dying in the battlefield in Iraq. So it's the same thing over and over again. These ancient vortexes in the Middle East that go back, to days of Anunnaki and Sumeria and Babylon. They need to have a certain amount of negative energy continuously broadcasting there in order to maintain a dark network alliance with their negative planetary overlords, let's put it that way. So it's like it requires that level of energy input. So we want to do the opposite. We want to say enough of that shit. We want to have positive vortexes, positive stargates, let in our Andromedan allies, our Arcturian allies, our Saturn allies, and many, many more that want to come in. Which brings me last maybe a couple minutes here. I recently came back from St. Martin. I was doing Atlantean grid work out there for almost a month and discovering things. And this goes in deeper idea of like the grid wars in Atlantis. So where a lot of these groups, negativity bases have been also put around the Caribbean, where they've been trying to hijack some of the ancient Atlantean vortexes and temples that are in the Caribbean. The Caribbean is part of ancient Atlantis. Atlantis was huge. It spanned across the Atlantic Ocean. But the Caribbean, several of the islands are falling within a certain latitude that, like Richard Hoagland, we talked about the 19.5 degree tetrahedron that surrounds the Earth as a grid system, like Hawaii was one of those points. This is the closest you're going to get to that southeastern point where I was at in St. Martin. It's around 18 degrees. Dominican Republic has that 19.5 degrees. So there's a lot of cluster of ancient Atlantean temples that are in the Caribbean because they were in that unique position of a tetrahedral grid that surrounded the planet. So it gave them easier access to off-world points. So the negative ETs know that as well. So they want to compromise that in order to take advantage of the sacred geometry and repolarize it more towards a negative bridge. So there's a lot going on in that area. So in St. Martin, though, it's got an ancient temple of Selene, of the moon goddess Selene. In Atlantis, they had the real Mount Olympus was in Atlantis. The real Greek archetypes of the Olympian deities, the Greek gods, really were much more were originated in Atlantis, and they all were extraterrestrial. They all relate to different planetary groups that were in contact with the Earth at the time. So we're working on helping to clear out some of those negative structures there and repolarize it so the original ones can come back in and help us out. So this is part of the bigger, broader work that we're doing about revamping some of the Atlantean vortexes and kicking out some of the negative groups out there, like the Series B group has a base there in St. Bart's. In St. Bart's, there's an undersea temple of Amphitrite, who was the queen of Poseidon. So they were trying to hack into this feminine energy from Atlantis and try to repolarize it. And St. Bart's is a playground for the elite and like the wealthy people that are there in St. Bart's. All have homes, mansions there. And Anguilla, that's right around there. Anguilla has a temple of Venus, or Aphrodite. So it was like a triple goddess energy in those 3 islands that we were working on reactivating. I got a lot of attacks from doing that though, because I realized there were other groups that didn't like that. They were trying to control the grids there. The gray ETs have a big base off of Puerto Rico, off of San Juan, undersea base there. That's one of the biggest ones they have. They've abducted people from different time periods and bring them to that facility. It's a very messed up location. Off of Haiti, there's another group that's called the Pytharians. I only discovered them literally on my trip out there because they started attacking me. I'm like, who's attacking me? And they're actually a hybrid group of this Apophis negative alien, the negative serpent group, and another group from Southern Cross constellation. Southern Cross constellation has a group there that works with the Beelzebub demonic archetype and tree of death energy. They're one of the major forces behind the Vatican and the false Christianity theme. Literally, you've had cardinals and bishops going to their homeworld of this group from Southern Cross constellation. It goes into deeper stories about that. They have a major base in Peru, and they're also working out of a facility in New Mexico, out of Holloman Air Force Base, this group from Southern Cross. So this other group called Pytharians, they're a hybrid of those two. And they have a base right off of Haiti. They're feeding off of an ancient temple of Ares or Mars that's actually off the coast of Haiti, which is one reason why that country's had so much conflict, because again, they feed off the energy of death and false revolution and that the dark magic energy there, of the dark serpent magic that Apophis is about. So this is a little tidbit. I have to go soon here, unfortunately, but I'll give you a little more like the bullet points of all this craziness that's going on. But so there's a lot of cool stuff, but it's a lot. It's a lot to kind of understand and sort of digest. So basically, to make it fun for you, so every 2 weeks, new moon, full moon, I do stuff, group meditation, channel activations, where we work with different positive ETs that are coming and different angelic groups to help us deconstruct specific negative ones. We're going to work tonight on this other last thing I'll mention. There's another group that's straight out of Norse mythology that works with Loki. They were like the dark elves, but they're actually a galactic goblin humanoid group. That's a very creepy one for Halloween, but they actually look like that, and they have a whole grid that's almost like a twisted version of like a mycelium network that comes from their planet, but it's like a negative network that they form through time to try to hack into people's fields. So we're going to be working on getting rid of part of that today of the obelisk and bringing in the good ones, because they're all trying to use the energy of the eclipses in a negative way. So we do the opposite. The point is that we want to take back our power at these like major nodal points in time during new moon, full moon, equinox, solstice periods are very important for people to gather to be like, no, we want to dedicate this point in time to be in alignment to our optimal timeline, to our ascension timeline, to our positive galactic civilization's heartbeat of love and light, and help get rid of this negative, oppressive control systems. And I also do individual sessions. That's the main thing, is that help people tap into past lives, soul retrieval, clearing out the blockages, starseed connections, things like that. But I'm getting the sign that we have to end here soon. Any question? Wow. After that mouthful? Second? Oh yeah, I live here. Oh, you mean in terms of ET groups? Oh, well, a lot of them are doing stuff here on both Light and Dark. Like when I came back a few weeks ago, that's the group from Series B and a Joker group. They're working with two defense contractors that have facilities, because there's a bunch of underground bases in Manhattan where they also have alien technologies, and they've done abductions of people. So it's a lot of things to try to counter it. But there's a lot of shit in New York. Let's put it that way. A lot of stuff here. Yeah.
I heard there's no tunnels in Switzerland.
No tunnels.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Like
No.
in Devils or whatever.
Oh. Switzerland is one giant, all the Swiss Alps were all underground bases there. I mean, I was there in year 2000. I literally heard them exploding when there were underground explosions, so they were making their tunnel systems. And I have a contact already who was very high up, and he used to work for one of the big families. And he's like, Switzerland is the biggest police state. It's like the headquarters of Illuminati.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking like global set energy. That's why the banking systems are there. There's a planetary vortex, Sabina, the divine mother energy, is also in the Swiss Alps, which deals with Saturn. So it's one of the Saturn vortexes in Switzerland, which is why they also try to hack into that to to try to access the collective consciousness. So Switzerland is full of actually one of the points we're doing today, because this other group, this Goblin group called that, they have a facility there in Switzerland too that we need to call in divine intervention to intercede there. And so that's Switzerland is a whole that's a whole fun place. Yeah.
Thank you.
8 o'clock tonight at the Obelisk. And I record them all also, people. So if you want to find me on Facebook, I just got on Instagram a few days ago. Finally, you're laughing about that one. So you can find me there under my name, or on Facebook, on YouTube, my channel. I give you my phone number if you want to text me or something. If you want to just write that down. My phone number is 347-776-7965. 347-776-7965. Just text me who you are first. I got a lot of spam calls.
Mandy.
Oh yeah, well wait, she asked about any extra groups involved in the World Health Organization. I mean, one of the things about the vaccination is that the nanobots in the vaccines are also connected to the negative ET group from Series B. And Series B, that's something, I have a long conversation with them when I was studying one. I'm like, what the hell's going on with this? They're basically creating, they're like these negative spin field particles that are part of the negative magnetic nanoparticles are literally creating a negative spin field that's like an antenna that's calibrating people to a negative timeline that they've co-created. People have enough of this flux field in their auric body. That means that they've consented to be part of our mutated timeline, and we are the ones, they said, who control the laws in that reality. So we're saying, no, F you. We're not consenting to that. But this is how they try to extrapolate, distorting free will concession to their side. The Defense Intelligence Agency is also uploading and downloading programs into people that are vaccinated who have the nanobots in their body. We've tracked that. Everyone I worked on with the vaccine has had direct lines where the nanobots are creating little antenna systems in the cellular structure that's relaying to the Defense Intelligence Agency. Some in the NSA, but mainly DIA. They can be deactivated, but you have to, there's a process for that. But that's so, so there's definitely a bigger thing going on about the genetic manipulation of humanity. It started with the chemtrails years ago, where they're using the chemtrails originally to try to toxify the DNA. So basically, we had a friend years ago who had contacted the CIA who told her that the main purpose of chemtrails was to negatively affect the genetic structure of humanity to slow down their evolutionary process. This is the exact same thing now with the RNA vaccine is the next level of that process. It's all about our cellular antenna system so that we're cut off from our true source and are tapped into a negative station of reality, which we don't want. So,
Was the vaccine their idea?
Oh, that was the whole reason that they created the virus, was to create the vaccine. it's the biggest false flag operation. Well, the Series B group is part of that. Yeah, they're Series A. Series A is the good group. Series B is the negative one. Yeah.
So double question. I guess it's kind of
Before they kick us out.
very, very broad. Is there
Well, yeah, I mean, it's first it's personal accountability to deal with your own shadow. It's doing regular meditations to clear your space, like Feng Shui, auric meditations. I mean, I work with angels, with Kabbalah work. So creating a sacred shamanic space in your environment so that your own crystal field in your apartment or house can sustain a higher love vibration, and you want to make it have a certain channel. You're going to channel it towards who? If you're Andromeda, if you know where you're from on a galactic level, invite them in so it creates more of a direct tunnel of light into your apartment so that they can flood your space. And also our local planetary friends want to help us out. Being some Saturn, being some Jupiter, there's it's working with like concentric spheres of light you can surround your apartment with, or different positive geometries that create like a sanctuary space to fill your area with healthy boundaries that act as a radiating antenna to the good guys, so to speak. So it's a lot about taking back our power in more and more subtle ways and realizing we're co-creators, but we've been so violent we don't even know it half the time. So it's drawing further lines in the sense that, okay, where are they misusing their technology? And then you zoom in, they're like, oh, this is part of our quantum level where we need to fill it up with our consciousness. It's like in the Bible having, there's many rooms in the mansion of God, but we only been locked into 2 rooms when there's like 100 rooms. So it's realizing there's so many more rooms that our consciousness can fill, and realizing that we have so much more of our power that's been hidden from us there. And doing different meditations to access that is also part of that work, and reclaiming that sacred architecture of love geometry.
Is love geometry going to work?
Oh, of course. So 2029, 2030 is still the timeline we're seeing for the positive ETs landing. We need to create that as a deeper level, because this is going to go crazier in the Middle East for a while before it gets better. Let's put it that way. So, but unfortunately, very sad. But this next year, there's a lot of new energies coming in 2024, 2025 that really want to help us out. So these assholes are creating more conflict to try to create a negative buffer to try to throw people off their axis of centeredness, so we can't be fully calibrated to the new energies. So it's all about distraction, like fear porn, war porn. It's like the theater of destruction in that sense. So we need to really be tuned in. Anyway, I got to go. The other speakers here now.
Right, thank you so much.
Big hugs, everybody. Thank you. Yeah. I'll probably put it on YouTube as well. Yeah. Bye. Turn off.